So for a while now, I've been trying to think of ways that I can push myself and try different things that I might not normally do. And I think I finally found a solution. And that solution is this spinning wheel. So what I've done is I've put a bunch of different concept or ideas or techniques that I can use in my poster designs, and I put them into this wheel so that I can just spin it, and whatever it lands on, that's what we're gonna do. So for instance, I have one that just says grunge design. So if that's what it is, that means I'll make a grunge design. But I also have things that are more specific, like using left or right justified type, or using or not using a grid. So hopefully by using this wheel, I'll be able to come up with some random attributes that I can use and kind of give myself more constraint in my designs. So right now, I don't have a lot of things on this list, but I'm hoping if I turn this into a series, you guys might have some things that you might want to add to this list. So that way I have a broader range of things to choose from. So if you enjoyed this video and you want to see me do more, please let me know. And then if there's any suggestions that you want to leave for me, leave those in the comments below. But enough talking, let's get into it. All right, so I've got the wheel here and it's pretty simple. All I have to do is click, it'll spin, and then it'll just randomly stop on something. So what I'm thinking is we'll just choose 3, as long as they're not conflicting, and then we'll just roll with that. If I do one that is conflicting, we'll roll again until we have 3 that we can use. So let's try the first 3. Okay, I think this one will be cool. So we're gonna use centered type. I wanna make sure I write this down so that I remember everything. All right, so that's our first one. Let's see what's next. All right, so this is a perfect example of 2 things that might be conflicting. So the last one that we did was for center justified type, and this one is for right justified. So we're actually gonna go with the first one we did, and we're gonna just discard this. All right, so this is going to be a grunge design with center justified type. Let's see what else we can get. All right, so it's going to be a typographic poster. So for what this means for me is that we're going to heavily focus on the typography, but I might also use some imagery, but the main focus should be the typography. So for this poster design, it's going to have center justified type, it's going to be a grunge sort of design, and it's going to be typographic. So now that we have our 3 constraints, we can get started. Alrighty, so I wasn't really sure what kind of words or what word I wanted to use for the typographic poster, so I asked ChatGPT just to come up with some ideas, and I landed on limerence. It's a new word that I learned about just maybe a couple months ago. I think it's kind of interesting. I might be able to do some cool imagery stuff with it, so I kind of want to go with that. And then I also had it just write me a quick poem. I don't know if I'll end up using this. Maybe I'll use something else in this space, but I figured at least for now, I have like the 2 components that I know I actually need. And so from here, it's just building out the grunge design. So I guess we're just going to just kind of go from here and see where it takes us. So get to it. So really, anytime that I'm doing a project like this where I'm experimenting with the typography, pretty much the first thing that I always do is just break up the word into the individual letters so that way I can manipulate each letter individually and I don't have to worry about trying to size things and move things around in weird ways. Takes a little bit of time, especially if it's a longer word, but it's the easiest thing to do. And then really from there, it's just experimenting and just seeing what else I can come up with. Changing weight size, font size, putting things on their side, distorting them, and really just trying to see what kind of interesting layouts I can come up with using these letters. Ruby, you having fun? I would love to tell you there's something specific that I do or know that could help you do this yourself, but truthfully, I don't ever know what I'm really doing. I'm just trying to figure out as I go along, and I just kind of wait for some inspiration to hit. So I'm just trying to actively just throw things together, move things, and just see if I can come up with an interesting shape or a way to make interesting connections between the letters that might be visually attractive. But once again, I don't have any concrete advice other than just do it and see what happens. All right, so far, this has been my favorite typography layout. I don't know if I'm in love with it or if I want to change some things. I might take a minute, see if I want to do anything else or try anything else, and then I'll probably go from there, and then, you know, we'll just continue on with the poster. So after I landed on that layout, there's one other kind of idea that I wanted to try out, and that was to do something where instead of trying to put the type together, I would try to spread it across the canvas and see if I can make some cool connections or some type of interesting composition. I've really only done this style like once before, and so I'm still trying to get better at it. So I really wanted to try it again and see if there's some way that I can make the composition look a little bit interesting by spreading out the letters, but also kind of have some kind of interesting play between each section of the letters that are kind of grouped together. All right, so I still think this is my best option. I don't know why, something about it at least makes somewhat sense to me. I feel somewhat drawn to it. I'm not sure if I'm in love with it yet. And then this is kind of my backup option, something a little bit more sporadic, I guess. A lot more in between it that I can put stuff. I don't know. It's just more open rather than the other one, which is very like kind of like one singular shape. So I don't know. They both have something interesting about them. So I'm gonna go with this one for now. I'll start developing it, and then if I get to a point where I'm like, yeah, it's just not working, then I'll switch over to the other one. So let's keep going. All right, so now that I actually have a layout that I've actually kind of decided and I want to develop more, I can really start kind of bringing in some of the other elements. And typically with these kinds of designs, what I'm really trying to do is have the imagery play off of the typography so it feels like a cohesive theme. And since Limerence is kind of about this, I guess, infatuation more or less, I thought it'd be kind of on theme to do something with love or, you know, something like that, at least imagery wise. But no matter what, I'm always looking for interesting photography or compositions that I can do that might kind of make people question things a little bit more so it's not so straightforward. It'd be quite easy for me just to put a square on the right and then just put in a photo and call it there. But I don't really find that interesting or intriguing. So for me, it's like, how can I take a photo that is already kind of interesting and then what can I play around with it, whether it's the texture or overexposing something, you know, just trying out a bunch of the techniques and tools and things that I've done on my past work that I might be able to apply here and just come up with something that is just visually interesting. For instance, I found this really cool effect that I can use if I play with backlit photos. So you probably saw me kind of playing around with that a bit. And I also did another typography layout for another poster design where it's just black and white. So I also wanted to play around with that. Really, everything that's in my head just is kind of theoretical. And I really just like to try it out and explore it and see what happens, because sometimes you find a really interesting way that the letters or the photos kind of play into each other. And I feel like that's where the magic happens. I think a good for instance is this black and white photo here, because the typography is white and the background is white, but the subject of the image is darker or black. You have this really interesting play between the letters and the typography, because it's almost like the typography is being cut out of the image. And so I feel like that's the kind of things that I'm looking for, where it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting or looks unique or kind of draws attention to both the images as well as the typography. So they kind of like complement each other, rather than being, here's a typography and then here's a completely different section for the photography. So I ended up using this photograph right here and then just kind of shifting the center of the image just so you only really see part of it. Like I said, I'm really just trying to build up this kind of mysterious or kind of non-conclusive photo. So that way, if someone were to see this, they would have to kind of think about whatever they think is going on in the image. They have to complete it themselves rather than me telling you exactly what the image is. To me, that just makes it more exciting and more interesting. All right, so I've got this at a pretty good spot. We're almost there, but I'm gonna take a quick lunch break. You know what you should do while I'm taking this break? You should check out my store. I've got a handful of different digital assets that I'm selling, and I even have some that are free. So if you're looking for something for your next project, go check it out, link in the description. So once I had the photograph and the typography kind of in a place that I was, pretty happy with, I can move on to the grunge aspect of this design. just bringing in a bunch of different elements and just trying to make it feel grungy, gritty, and, you know, kind of chaotic. And really, this is an exercise in intuition. There's not a right or wrong way. I'm not necessarily trying to think too hard about what I'm doing. I'm just trying to bring in elements, see how they interact together, and if I like it, great. If I don't, then I just get rid of it. So there's not really a whole lot of me trying to process or like build something up. It's just trying things, and if I like it, it stays, and if I don't, it leaves. And that's all there is to it. Now, originally I was thinking I wasn't going to add any type of color into this poster design, but something with the upper right corner made me feel like maybe I should, like there could be something there, just one little bit of color. And so I was trying to experiment with some of the other photographs that I didn't use and see if maybe there was something there. And I ended up doing this really cool effect where I took one of the older photos and I blew it up really big, and then I set it to overlay, so that way it kind of colored just a little bit of the image underneath it. And I feel like it kind of adds just a nice subtle kind of extra texture or color to the image that wasn't there before. And then I also explored just kind of keeping an image in the upper right instead of just leaving it blank. Part of me feels like this was a good idea, part of me doesn't. I think sometimes it's really nice to kind of have the contrast where everything's shifted to one side and there's nothing on the other, but I kind of like having the photograph on the upper right. Hopefully it just adds a little bit of balance into the poster design, but not too much to where it feels, you know, completely centered, because I do still want to have that contrast where it's a little bit more heavy on the left side. So hopefully there's just enough balance to where it's not too crazily contrasted, but they still have that contrast. But really after that, it was just making some finer tweaks and adjustments and adding in some textures. And here's the final result. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think the typography is pretty fun. It's at least interesting. Might be a little bit hard to read, but you know, in this kind of style, I feel like it's okay to kind of push those boundaries a little bit. And I think the composition is also interesting, especially how I have the kind of background image being pushed off in a weird way. So you're not really getting the entire picture, as well as the only other picture that you're able to see in the upper right corner kind of cut off, so you're only seeing, you know, only a small portion of it. So I feel like it kind of lends itself to being a little bit more mysterious and kind of having people fill in the gaps of the story in, you know, whatever way that they see fit. So one thing that I did in this poster design that I haven't actually done before was I took one of the images that I was thinking about using as the background image, this one specifically, and then I just blew it up, and then I changed that group to overlay, so that way we would get some really interesting coloring going on the rest of the photograph. Because before it was really just black and white, and while it was cool, I feel like having just this little bit of color kind of come in adds something to the image that I think makes it a little bit more interesting. And it also helped add a little bit of texturing, and so I think this was something that was different that I haven't done before, but was really cool and I might actually use later on. And while I am happy with how this poster turned out, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it in terms of using this as a way to kind of push myself and do different things. In this instance, I feel like the constraints that I had weren't quite hard enough or more unique enough. I feel like they kind of actually lent themselves to what I normally do. And so the results were kind of a little bit more what I would actually do. That being said, I do want to try this again. Hopefully the next time it might be a little bit harder, or it might push me in a different direction than I might normally go. So if you liked this video and you want to see me do more, please let me know in the comments, as well as let me know what you thought about this poster. And of course, as always, if you found this video helpful or entertaining in any way, I'd appreciate it if you would check out the rest of my channel and then consider subscribing. I hope to see you in the next video.